Welcome. Thank you so much for sticking around for this last session of the day, I believe it is. We are here to optimize your data and analytics costs. Who's excited for this topic? There's some energy in the room. Super, super happy. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. And actually, today, we are going to invite a panel of experts also to join us in a moment on stage, who will be here for a panel session as we talk through the important topic of FinOps. So before we do that, I want to, myself and Eric, we'll do a little bit of setup, and then we'll have the panelists join us. So GenAI. We couldn't start a session without talking about GenAI. It is the theme of the moment. GenAI is everywhere. And actually, what's really interesting about the topic of GenAI and FinOps is so many of the use cases that I am hearing about from customers every day around GenAI are around cost optimization, productivity, efficiency. Might be your data developer who is writing code, who is now assisted by GenAI. It might be that marketing creative person who is now being assisted with GenAI to create content, be it images, SEO search terms, email copy. GenAI in the call center, helping your call center individuals route through calls. GenAI is everywhere. And it is delivering on that productivity, efficiency, cost optimization. Those are some of the most popular use cases. And in fact, what we see from the stats from various companies, IDC, HBR, et cetera, is that those leaders who are leaning into GenAI, the data AI leaders, typically they're outperforming other companies on all the metrics that matter, be it revenue, market share, also operational efficiency. So as we enter this world of GenAI, we see a tension, because as we're going into the world of GenAI, it requires investment. So especially it being in a year where cost optimization, a lot of scrutiny over budgets, this wave of GenAI has come and hit us, and it requires investment. Yet at the same time, we're also seeing a lot of complexity in our data landscapes, because with GenAI comes new types of data, unstructured data. In fact, it's estimated 80% of company data is unstructured. And now to really leverage GenAI, we must be using all of that data. And finally, governance of that data, the security of that data. When we speak to customers, we hear you. There's a lot of drive to say, hey, I want to innovate with GenAI. I want to be doing experimentation. I want to be building the next GenAI app. I have those experimental, on-demand needs, unpredictable needs. At the same time, I'm also running mission-critical workloads. In fact, I moved to the cloud because the cloud offered agility and flexibility. How do I take advantage of flexibility, leaving behind the on-prem world where I often had to over-provision capacity? I want visibility. I want transparency. And in fact, these are all the topics that lend themselves into the world of FinOps. So as we move forward with Google's data and AI cloud, we're very much thinking about all of these topics. And this is why you see in the way that you buy the data and AI cloud, we offer different pricing models, pay-as-you-go versus editions, commitments. We offer tiers of capabilities. We offer different types of storage to manage that unstructured, large, voluminous data versus your structured data. So we're thinking a lot every day about how do we deliver the most cost optimal, the most performant, price performant data and AI cloud for all of your needs today and those future needs with GenAI. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Eric, our head of FinOps at Google Cloud, to say a few words.
Thanks, Yasmeen. After we have the microphone. So as Yasmeen mentioned, with the explosion of data and GenAI, we need a unified data open platform. And we need to manage in the most cost-efficient manner. And what we need is really a disciplined approach on how we manage the Gen AI data costs. So within Google, we introduced, and been working with many customers around the concept and the discipline of Cloudfinops. So what is Cloudfinops? It is an operational framework that brings technology, business, and finance team together, driving that financial accountability, really accelerate the business value of the overall cloud transformation journey. To that extent, we've been working with over 100+ customers just in the past years alone in their transformation journey to really help understand and guide them through what are the key building blocks for successful adoption of FinOps. The first start with accountability and enablement. It's really about bringing that cross-functional team together to drive the standards, the best practices on how you're managing your data analytics costs, policies, and controls. Second, how are you going to measure success regarding your Gen AI use cases, your data workloads, and so forth? So then defining those cost KPIs, the value metrics become very, very important. The third aspect is cost optimizations. Understanding how you optimize your Gen AI data, the BigQuery analytics costs, from the resourcing optimization perspective, pricing optimizations, and perhaps you might need to re-architect your entire application stack to really maximize the business value. The fourth aspect of the building blocks of FinOps is planning forecasting. How are you going to able to identify what is the actual cost you need as your data explosion increases, time over time? So financial forecasting, better planning and forecasting become an equally important aspect of your critical pillars in the FinOps discipline. Finally, it's about a set of tools, accelerator, bring near real-time insights into your data analytic costs, enabling automation and control become an essential part of your FinOps journey. Now let us zoom into one of the key pillars, which is what I mentioned, cost optimizations. And one of the things that with BigQuery additions that introduced was auto-scaling. And with auto-scaling, you essentially can specify your top-line capacity budget. And BigQuery, what's really cool about this is actually it can auto-scale based on your workload requirements. And it will adjust your compute capacity needs as your demand increases. And what's really awesome as well is for your queries that are already in process, it can actually accelerate those queries as well. The other piece that for BigQuery auto-scaling, it can scale down to 0. So you set a min and a max threshold, and your min can be 0 as well. So that's a really cool feature that we introduced. From a FinOps perspective, what auto-scaling does is essentially eliminate the cost of managing your entire data analytic workloads. From capacity, in other cases, we see over a customer able to deliver 40% compute efficiencies over the flat rate offerings today. As Yasmeen mentioned, this is just another example of how we are listening to our customers' needs and building great features to help our customers maximize their business value on Google Cloud. So talking about listening to our customers and meeting their needs, with the release of BigQuery additions, we're doing just that, right? Specifically, we are addressing customer needs in 3 key areas. The first one is flexibility. Only paying for what you use, you can actually mix and match between the tiering of the pricing structure from standard to enterprise and so forth. The second aspect of this is predictability. Provide 1-year and 3-year commits. One of the key examples is low-cost storage using compressed or physical storage. We've seen many customers, matter of fact, have seen 10 to 15% of 10 to 15x of compression ratios using physical storage. The third aspect is control. As I mentioned earlier, with auto-scaling ability, you can set the min and max threshold of your performance requirements need. So with that, let's turn to our key panelists here and hear from them on how they've been able to plan, forecast, and optimizing their data analytics workloads.
Okay, so let's maybe just start with a quick round of intros. So maybe your name, your role, and where you're coming from. Gunjan, shall I start with you on my right here?
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Gunjan. I'm from Palo Alto Networks. I work in the Cloud Center of Excellence team, and my focus is Cloudfinops. Palo Alto Networks is the largest cybersecurity company. So, yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. Valantis.
Hello, hello. Yeah, so my name is Valantis Vasilakis. I'm working as a tech lead at Mercado Libre, and specifically in the cloud economics team. I'm coming from Buenos Aires.
Hi, I'm Anthony Savio. I work for Bayer, specifically in our crop science division, and my current title is the data warehouse engineering lead, so very focused primarily around BigQuery and some supplementary services that interact very well with our platform.
Thank you. So first question, we're in this world of GenAI. Business wants to experiment, data teams want to experiment, but actually sometimes we find the worlds of IT and finance in opposition, because finance like predictable costs. They want a budget that they know what the run rate is, they know it's predictable, it's easy to understand. Yet in the world of technology, we're innovating. There's so many people trying out large language models, building applications, etc. How do you see those two worlds in your companies coming together, or maybe not coming together? Gunjan, over to you first.
So it's an exciting intersection. Our team, Cloudfinops team, we are part of the engineering organization, and we work very closely with finance, so we get to see both worlds. Engineering side of my brain is always thinking, oh, look, a squirrel. I want to try that new technology. I want to play with this new thing, which is unpredictable in nature, right? Finance is this spreadsheet here, very predictable. So in our company at Palo Alto Networks, we do business partnership early on in the process. So finance team partners with engineering teams to figure out what things they're planning to use, and how do we take that into consideration. And for the things that happen, like GenAI just came up, it wasn't planned. For that, we take that into consideration for forecast and planning, and how do we bring in FinOps to optimize it.
Great, so a key is a partnership between IT and business. Valantis, what about at Mercado Libre? How does that partnership work?
Cool. So at Mercado Libre, central IT teams build abstraction layers for the business to use. So a developer is not managing any infrastructure. They don't go on the console. They don't spin any resources. Central teams manage and optimize all of it. So we can talk to them and drive the strategy with them, because it's a team of dedicated specialists.
Interesting. And often with central IT teams or central focus, there's a focus on also consolidation rather than trying new tools or new technology. So I know at Bayer, you've actually gone through a consolidation across clouds. You've consolidated to Google Cloud. How has that consolidation versus wanting to use new technology or experiment, how does that balance work?
So that's a tough question. I mean, we still do have a multi-cloud presence. Now, BigQuery is our centralized data warehouse solution. So we're going to take advantage of things like Omni and BigLake to try to reach out and let the data sit in the original cloud provider, but still give us that single pane of glass so we can actually go through, access, do our analytics, and try to drive new business revenue or new insights. For us, particularly with this year, we've historically used on-demand billing model for BigQuery. So slots was, a key focus area, and our finance teams have been very pleased with our success the last few months here. So I think we've targeted our top 10 spend projects, and that was a good portion of our overall cloud spend bill. Going forward, we're going to try to expand that to be 100% of all of our projects, because it's not just those common patterns that you always see. It's that random data science query, some analytical process that maybe you could have done differently that ends up causing you an unpredictable bill that you don't want to deal with.
So Anthony, since you mentioned about optimizing your data analytics costs, so how do you go about managing and monitoring those data analytics costs?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's low-hanging fruit there. So using budget, alerts, using monitoring, trying to make sure you're keeping an eye on your slot utilization, number of concurrent queries, et cetera. Additionally, having one centralized team focused on some of those new release functionality components, because not everybody's going to understand how they can specifically apply one new feature that could actually really drive your bottom line down. So last year, one of our key focus points was using table value functions, and by embedding that into our kind of reusable workflow, we were able to reduce about 40% of our capacity. And then this year, we did something similar with slot additions.
How about you, Valantis?
So first, I want to give some context of the infrastructure we are managing. At Mercado Libre, there are 19,000 people using BigQuery every month. We have more than 290,000 datasets powered by more than 150,000 slots. So my team, or the team I work in, the cloud economics team, we have developed a set of tools to monitor all this, because deviations can hit us very hard. We have developed cost alerts, have developed a series of dashboards, and we have created meetings with all the important teams internally to know what they do, to expect their deployments. When a deviation happens, we know about it because we receive an email, and then we can talk to them. In terms of BigQuery, our platform, Fury, is 100% on slots. However, we have a small part that is off-platform. That small part, we have daily quotas per user, so you cannot exceed a certain amount. Before you could, and it was interesting. Now you cannot anymore. We are monitoring the slots utilization across the entire organization. In our case, it never drops below 95%, 97%. It's quite stable because certain platform services have been built around the feature of sharing slots. So they know when the reservation of one team is not fully utilized, another team will take it up.
That's very interesting to hear. And for context for our audience, so BigQuery sold through slot compute units, and we have this concept of idle slot sharing. So it's interesting that you have these quotas by user, but actually the idle slot sharing means each user can have a quota, but if somebody else isn't using their quota, a free-for-all.
Yes, so actually the quota is for the analysis part. For those projects that are not covered with slots, we allow them to use analysis, but not exceed a certain threshold. All the platform is with slots due to the amazing work of certain teams that centrally manage all this.
Amazing. I'd love to hear, Gunjan, from yourself. How do you manage those unpredictable workloads or enable your teams to do experimentation?
Similar to what Valantis said, we also enable slot sharing, idle slot sharing in the default pools. But also for unpredictable workloads, we also set a bunch of alerts and automation of flex slot purchase as and when needed for those unpredictable workloads.
Great, and we actually do see a number of customers do that. They use the pay-as-you-go on-demand kind of models in concert with annual 3-year commitments. The annual 3-year commitments are great for those very predictable, mission-critical workloads, and it sounds like Palo Alto Networks, you're using that pay-as-you-go on-demand to support that ad hoc need. Amazing. So in a cost optimization climate, where this year, when we hit this year, every organization I spoke to thought there was a recession coming, budgets were being slashed, where we need to reduce costs for storage, for compute. But with Gen AI coming, has investment opened up, new investment come into IT? How is your organization looking at now, in a cost optimization year, doing Gen AI? Maybe start with yourself, Valantis.
Yes, so optimizing is very big in Mercado Libre nowadays. Our motto internally is gain efficiency to continue winning. So everybody is really, really focused on this. My team is searching for cost optimization opportunities across our multi-cloud environment, actively with alerts, with the monitoring, and we are measuring the time it takes us to detect an opportunity or an alert, and then the time it takes to the internal team to implement a fix or to write a new solution. We then measure the delta of the cost that occurred between the time we let them know and the time they implemented the new solution, and annualized savings. Just to give you an idea of what an annualized saving is, we did have an alert earlier this year about storage in a specific project. Then we let the team know, they didn't know. The cost grew. Eventually, it grew to more than $20,000 a day, extra cost. They did work with a Google team, they did implement a solution, and eventually dropped back to a few hundreds of dollars. And if you make the math, an extra cost of $20,000 a day, it's $600,000 a month, or more than $7 million a year. So it's a big deal monitoring those alerts.
That's amazing. So setting up, it sounds like really sophisticated actually metrics on top of data and workload growth, setting up alerts so that if those are moving and going above certain thresholds, you're actually doing some really close monitoring and helping the business to manage their cost.
Correct. Because with so many users, when the alert goes off, it's a big hit. Yes, we're not talking about $10, $20, $50. We're talking about thousands of dollars. If we do not see it coming, it will hit us very hard. So we have people dedicated in doing that.
Great. Anthony and Gunjan, any thoughts from yourselves?
So from our perspective, I think we've kind of taken a heavy emphasis on how we're actually creating our projects. So not having one centralized project where free-for-all, ad hoc, and automated processes are running, but actually segmenting those that fits very nicely, so we understand what are those predictable workloads, and we understand exactly what that capacity is. But then for the unpredictable ones, we can safeguard ourselves from actually incurring those costs. So trying to forward think how you want to define that resource hierarchy will actually pay immense dividends over time, because it gets much more difficult to break that out once you already have it up and running and people are using it day over day. So having that forward thinking can definitely go a long way.
That sounds great. So it sounds like, so on one hand, it's the measurement and alerts, but on the other hand, actually using reservations and projects as a way of splitting different workloads and being able to monitor, potentially even do chargeback models around those.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good point. So with slots, essentially all of your bills going to show up under that BQ slot admin project. So one of the techniques we've used, which kind of ties back to FinOps, is actually calculating the amount of slot hours being used per project within each reservation, and then essentially getting a percentile that then we can bump that up against our actual slot bill and define this project is going to spend X amount of dollars. And then with FinOps tagging, as we're saying at the project level, we can actually have that relationship and understand however deep we want to go within our org, this is where the costs are occurring.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks for sharing that. One of the common challenges that many of our customers face today, especially around cost allocation for BigQuery as a data analytics workload, is considered as more of a shared services platform. How so able to go into that level of granularity of allocating those slots by usage back to the individual line of business become very important. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think perhaps to Gunjan, right? Going back to the AI questions, right? At Google, we feel it's an advantage, right, that we bring AI to your data. And I think that's one of the key things of cost optimizations, cost savings, but also you're not incurring any network egress costs. And the other aspect is also security. So having said that, how do you go think about securing your data as you deploy your Gen AI models?
So like many other companies right now, Gen AI is the buzz. Everyone's playing around with it. When I think about it, it's any project that has to do with Gen AI, 70 to 80% is data prep work before it even gets to the LLM part. Need to do a data cleanup, organize your data, all that stuff, right? We at Palo Alto Networks, we have almost an exabyte of data in BigQuery. So we are operating at that scale. And as the largest cybersecurity company, we have to think a lot about data security, data privacy. So we're taking that extremely seriously. So with that big of a surface area of data, it's always better to bring AI to your data than take all that data to the AI. So that's an advantage with BigQuery.
That's great, and especially as Anthony mentioned earlier, BigQuery Omni as well. Right. So one of the key things that we'd love to hear from each of you, matter of fact, is can you share some of the learnings and best practices, right? As you were going through this journey, thinking from a FinOps perspective, cost optimization. So what are some of the key lessons learned? So maybe we start with you, Anthony.
Sure. So I think we touched on a couple of them. So trying to think through your resource hierarchy and how you want to break out those projects. Having that FinOps tagging approach kind of baked into that upfront model and not trying to react and apply it after the fact. Clustering, partitioning is going to be crucial for BigQuery. And we've kind of taken a mode of we're going to default with clustering across all of our tables because the actual negative impact is very minimal, but the positive impact is incredibly substantial. Whether or not it's the actual field you're filtering on or not, we're still seeing a pretty significant return on that space. Additionally, pay close attention to what's being released. And some of it might be intimidating from the list price, but take that risk, explore, learn something new, and if you're able to do it successfully and apply it and scale it out across your entire organization, you can definitely reap some benefits there.
So to all the platform teams that manage BigQuery centrally, I believe you should all build the guardrails that help you avoid altogether the impact of mistakes or minimize it. Because mistakes happen, will happen, user will do queries that are not excellent, and you can help your company avoid the cost. That's why you should buy slots, you should plan your workloads, buy compute power, so you drop the cost of those queries, and using information schema, you can actually see what is happening. You can see per table if it's partitioned, if it's clustered, if not, and you can optimize those environments to just reduce your cost.
I'll talk about two things at a high level. One is a high-level recommendation, and one is a specific that was already sort of covered. So at a high level, I would say work on your data foundation. You need a very solid data foundation, which means labeling, tagging your resources, and your organization structure, hygiene. You need to have a very good hygiene there. So it might seem like an overwhelming amount of work, but it's worth the effort. After that, specifically for BigQuery, understand the pricing model and not just understand what it says in the documentation, but have a mental model for BigQuery pricing, and have a common mental model that your FinOps team has, finance team, and engineering team. So you're all speaking the same language. Third one is define and measure KPIs. So define agreed upon KPIs and do a detailed measurement. And in measurement, there's two areas. One is billing. So you need to have an understanding of where you're spending money, which SKUs, which operations, which projects are spending the most money. And the second one is usage, so slot monitoring, etc. There's a great project from Google that's on GitHub about slot monitoring. We have implemented that. But both of these will give you an idea of where you need to work on. There's a lot of recommendations out there, but we are a huge believer in 80-20 rule. So 20% of the queries, 20% of the projects that end up costing 80% of your bill. So you need to figure out what those are, which queries are costing the most, which projects are costing the most. And one specific recommendation, as Anthony mentioned earlier, clustering and partitioning. You can think of it as a sort of grocery. If you're trying to buy cheese, you know which aisle to go to, right? It's like all the dairy is clustered together. It makes it easier for you to go and find cheese or my favorite candy aisle. But it also has an impact on cost. So this is where we are also exploring Gen AI to see what is the data access pattern, and if we can use Gen AI to have recommendation on how to cluster and partition the data.
Amazing. It sounds like analytics on your data and analytics. Understand how data is being used. Well, with an exabyte of data, it's really important, I guess, to really understand where that data is coming from, how it's being partitioned, stored, managed. And then on top of it, analyzing also from what Valantis was talking about and yourself, Gunjan, how are people using that data, setting up alerts and being thoughtful about the projects that you set up. I know at Bear they have a really sophisticated naming structure that helps with that chargeback model. And I wanted to emphasize from a product perspective, as we look at BigQuery, we're hearing a lot of feedback around things like chargeback models. How can we have kind of visibility of who's using slots or even who's using idle slots and have chargeback modes. We're hearing thoughts around things like alerts and metrics. And actually with our roadmap and where we're taking BigQuery, with now Duet AI, there's a step of, yes, providing some of those controls to customers, but then automating some of those. So when a user does write a non-optimal query, can Duet AI actually rewrite that query to be more optimal because it knows your data, it knows the schema, it knows the partitions or indexes. So I'm super looking forward to what our engineering teams are working on in the space of Duet AI, because I think it not only will provide some of the controls, but actually automate some of that for in the FinOps space. So that's all we have time for today on the panel. I want to thank you again for sticking around for the last session of the day, and thank you to our panelists.